All right, let's move right on and find out the impact of the summer season, what it has been on consumer sentiment, what we're looking at for consumer durables in particular, and whether or not we're seeing margin pressure due to raw material costs. Manish Sharma is the CEO and president at Panasonic India, and he's with us on the show. Good to have you on board. Manish, to begin with, it seems like a double whammy for the consumer durable space because you've got the increasing raw material prices or commodity prices, and then, of course, added to that, the impact of the second wave. What is the current demand scenario looking like?
So current demand scenario is kind of almost standstill because majority of the consumption is not happening at this point of time. And on the other hand, I think while you say that it's kind of double whammy, I would have my own perspectives here. One, in the backdrop of what has happened in last 3 to 4 years. And second is the experience of the year gone by. And I'll sort of reflect some of those perspectives. So first is, I think, the demand explosion for this industry, and especially for products where the penetration ratios were pretty low. For example, air conditioners is one of the categories where penetration ratios are still just about 6% of the total households in the country. And when we compare ourselves on demand, let's say comparative to China, so China has a domestic demand of almost 80 million units of air conditioners annually. And we have a demand of only about 7.5 million, which is just about 10% of the demand which exists in China. So that is the kind of potential on which we are sitting on. And second is, in last 3 to 4 years, majority of consumer durable categories have witnessed transformation in the policy. So both on the demand side, the GST structure was implemented, wherein majority of categories were falling into 28% bracket, and subsequently the requests, some of the televisions started to fall into 18%. On the other hand, on the supply side also, a lot of changes into duty structures have happened with the intent of them to be starting to get manufactured in the country though. And therefore, there was some sort of rub-off on the overall demand, which was supposed to be sort of kind of growing more exponentially than incremental. And I believe that it is just kind of due. And in the time to come, this industry is going to witness exponential demand expansion. And I believe that it is just around the corner. And second is the year gone by. When we see that, I think a couple of very clear insights are coming out. One, after the first wave, consumers were preferring products which were helping them kind of multitask. And currently we see that consumers are more cautious and the discretionary spends are sort of going down quite rapidly. And consumers are spending, only into, their healthcare requirements, and only the requirements wherein they are not making any discretionary investment. So I believe that pent-up demand, like it came back last year after the lockdown started to get relaxed, is going to come back this year also, and we are keeping that cautious optimism, so to say.
Hear that. Having said that, in the near term, in the last
I'm sorry, I'm losing your audio.
Manish, wanted to understand that, at a time like this, when everyone's working from home, consumers as well are at home, what is the demand for home appliances? Is there any sort of down trading that you're seeing or any particular trend in consumer preferences right now?
So demand in last about 35-40 days have gone down quite significantly. And as we all know that majority of categories do not fall into essential categories. So therefore the demand is pretty low, only where the containments are not to the extent the retail is not contained enough. There some amount of retail is happening. However, if I have to reflect upon last few months, clearly two indicators are coming out. And as I mentioned, one, consumers are preferring products which are helping them multitask, which essentially means products which are smart, connected, and people can use those products to stay more comfortable in a more comfortable environment within their homes. So which adds on to their comfort, convenience, possibly energy efficiency, safety. So therefore, smarter products are finding, more of the consideration set of consumers. And second is products which are low on total cost of ownership. So I think this major thought process change is starting to evolve. previously consumers were used to sort of prefer products which were high on value proposition and possibly value for money. But now the consideration set is such that products which will have a lower cost of ownership, which essentially means not only the initial buying cost, but cost of the total ownership, which means products which are more energy efficient, which have lesser maintenance costs. So those kind of trends are very clearly evolving now.
Okay, fair enough. It will have impacted the overall demand scenario, understandably so. Now, Q1, I understand, accounts for about 35 to 40% of the summer products for most companies. What is the recovery expectation when it comes to the summer products?
So it appears, when we went into the sort of second lockdown, I think it started to happen in the first week of April, and then gradually the country went into a situation where demand was almost zero. So in some sense, we are looking at a situation where Q1, when I say that it's April to June, may be just about 35 to 40% of the original estimates for the industry, which means the opportunity might be 60 to 65% lower than what it ideally should have been. And then when it comes to Q2, again, coming back, in the backdrop of our experience of the first lockdown when it happened. So I think very clearly we had the pent-up demand coming back. And in some sense, industry enjoyed the advantage of the pent-up demand starting from July, August last year. So I'm assuming that a very similar trend, if not to that extent, because this time one difference is there that consumers on sentiments are slightly lower compared to the previous lockdown. So we are expecting that starting from mid of June, recovery may start to happen. In some parts of the country, especially, for example, in Haryana, the guidelines are such that shops are starting to open in a phenomena like odd even. So we are expecting that in next 2 to 3 weeks, gradually the situation will start to get back to normal, and Q2 might get back to the normal scenario, and we are expecting pent-up demand to start to happen from Q3 onwards.
Sure. Manish, since things are very different in each state, like you just highlighted in terms of their rules and regulations regarding the curbs, curfews and the lockdowns, help me understand what's happened to online sales and whether there too you've seen a sequential decline.
It's a very similar situation because there are three perspectives to this. First one is consumers themselves are preferring to spend not on discretionary ones. And of course, air conditioners and refrigerators to a larger extent are necessities. Here comes the second perspective, that people in a situation where the sentiments are very low and would like to practice utmost caution. It's not only about purchasing a consumer durable. It is also about getting it installed within the home, and especially air conditioners, products like those require a specific period to be allocated for those installation and commissioning processes to happen within their homes. And therefore, consumers largely have stayed away from making those purchase decisions and kind of postponing those purchase decisions. And still summer goes on. So as industry, we are keeping that situation that the pent-up demand kind of will come back. So that is the second perspective. And third one is that while there were containments, and initially, the industry was also deliberating that whether consumer durables for e-commerce should fall into essential category or not. So I believe the situation is such that for some of these small, like kitchen appliances or the ones which can be kind of hand carried, the demand still was there. But for larger appliances, even on e-commerce platforms, the demand significantly went down.
Fair point. So, given that the first quarter accounts for about 35 to 40% of your summer products for most companies, I mean, not just you, industry-wide, if you could just quantify what is the recovery expectations in terms of summer products specifically?
So we are also watching this situation very closely, because with the passing weeks, the situation is becoming more tough for the annual forecast to be evaluated. As of now, my expectation is that we may be just about 85% of the original forecast for this industry's demand for this financial year. And I say that in the backdrop of the assumption that 60% of the opportunity of first quarter may be lost. And this essentially, as you rightly mentioned, 35% of the overall demand comes out of first quarter. So which essentially means that 20% of the annual demand may get wiped out in the first quarter itself. And then I'm expecting that 5 to 10% of the lost opportunity of first quarter may come back in the remaining 3 quarters. And therefore, the likely scenario as of now is that industry might be just about 85 or 90% of the annual original forecast which we imagined for ourselves. So 10% of deficit in demand may happen in this financial year.
And what's the outlook in terms of your overall recovery? Do you think that it is likely to be fast-paced as we see the vaccination drive pick up momentum, as things start stabilizing? Is there a sense of pent-up consumer demand that you believe will unleash itself, or do you think it's going to be very phased, very gradual this time around?
Yes, so I'm very optimistic on this, and for the fact I know that there is an effort which is cutting across all the people in the position of responsibility, whether it is government or it is industry chambers or the industry itself or we as individuals. So I think the situation will become far more better in the time to come, and I say that in the capacity of the chair at FICCI's Electronics Manufacturing Committee. So we at FICCI are also kind of accumulating the demand for vaccines, and we are looking at providing that assistance to people, especially for the industry, its employees and their relatives. And as an organization also, we have started this activity quite rapidly across all our locations in the country. So both at the supply side, because we need to restart the manufacturing operations and take them to the extent they used to be prior to the lockdown when it happened. And last week, we have restarted our factories, especially for air conditioners, refrigerators, and washing machine manufacturing, because we are also looking at monsoon season to begin, and hence the demand of washing machines in the time to come. So I'm extremely optimistic that in line with the increase in vaccination, the demand will start to get back, and because the sentiment itself will start to get back to normal. And revival, I believe, as I said, will start to happen from June onwards, both while the vaccination will speed up and the overall supply chain will start to get back to normal.
Much for sharing with us the outlook, and wishing you all the very best for the coming quarters. That's the view coming in from Panasonic India.